What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer. Earlier today, some of the Overwatch developers did a Q&A on Reddit where they answered various questions about the development past of Overwatch, and even gave a few teases about stuff we can potentially expect in the future. So in this video, I just wanted to real quickly run through and spotlight a few specific responses from the developers, which I think are worth taking note of. So without further ado, let's jump right on in. First up, some responses from Overwatch game director Jeff Kaplan. First question, will there be a Summer Games this year? Yes, the Summer Games are returning this year. Information is coming very soon. How much of the Overwatch universe do you want/plan to show to the world? We have many years of lore planned for the Overwatch universe. There are so many aspects that we're excited about. Far-reaching plot lines and individual character arcs. There are also a lot of heroes, places, and world groups we want to tell more stories about. We're also excited about telling stories in new ways and using new mediums. What is the biggest current priority in terms of game design right now? The most immediate priority is a balance patch aimed at the double shield meta. This will show up on the experimental card within the next few weeks. We don't have any reworks immediately imminent for any hero, although we are discussing some. 2CP is more of an ongoing exploration for us. We've tried many things, and have yet to be satisfied with any of the results. Paris has gotten some attempts at a rework, but we weren't pleased with our results, so we paused. We haven't started looking at Horizon again yet. Have any solutions been looked at for border bullying? The border system will go away with Overwatch 2. We want to make sure to recognize your accomplishments, but we'll be doing something different for the sequel. 2CP is often viewed as the most controversial Overwatch map mode. Were there any plans to allow players to skip 2CP, or perhaps avoid certain map types like they can avoid players? Our first goal is to make the mode something that everyone enjoys. You can see by today's experimental card that we try various things to iterate on the game, just some of them don't work. For Overwatch 2, we have some ideas that will allow more player agency, but nothing is set in stone yet, so I don't want to commit to any promises. And in the spirit of being open, I think the criticism of 2CP is fueled a bit by the echo chamber of certain communities. But overall, the maps and mode are not as universally hated as some would have you believe. Throughout the development of Overwatch, has there been anything you're willing to share that you've regretted or wish you'd handled differently? This type of question is very hard to answer because we all now have the benefit of hindsight. Sometimes I wish we had kept offense and defense heroes rather than merging them into damage, and only allowing offense heroes to be played on attack and defense to be played on defense. I know that idea might sound crazy and stupid, but I think it would have allowed us to go more all-in on some niche hero designs like Torbjorn, Symmetra, and Bastion. Much of the issue we face with the hero balance on these heroes is our player expectations that these heroes should be fully viable on all situations, and that really wasn't our intent or vision for the game. We believed that with hero swapping, people would be more willing to adapt to solve the problem. We're fighting some amount of human psychology and game design, I know. The Sombra ARG is another standout, lol. So those were the standout responses from game director Jeff Kaplan, but next up we have some very interesting sort of insightful comments from lead hero designer Jeff Goodman. And personally, I think some of these responses are the most interesting ones we've gotten in a while. Why is Sombra DPS instead of support? Actually, I'm not sure if people are aware of this even, but Sombra was initially prototyped as a support hero. In fact, it really went far beyond prototype. She only became a damage hero in the stretch of her development. She had some of the most significant changes while going through development. Her whole kit used to be centered around staying invisible and landing hacks on the entire enemy team. You could hack more than one target at a time. But hack worked differently then. It used to last a lot longer, and it reduced your healing and damage output instead of making you unable to use abilities. This meant even though you had one less healer as a support, you theoretically made up for it by reducing the enemy team's damage. It was a pretty fun little minigame for her, but people were ultimately very frustrated by being debuffed like that, even if they knew on paper she was reasonably balanced. In fact, we've tried a couple times to try a damage dealt debuff. Wrecking Ball had one of these at 1.2, but it hasn't stuck yet. That debuff ends up feeling more frustrating to players than many other debuffs like Ana's Grenade or Zen's Discord even. So we went with a more aggressive kit and moved Sombra to the offense instead, especially because we were already feeling on the fence about non-healers being in support. At this point in the game, if a hero is in the support category, they're expected to be able to heal. That will be a challenge here as well. Do characters that exist in the story, like Mauga, Sanjay, and Daehyun, have any chance of being heroes in the future? This is always a possibility. Ana is an example of a hero that came from the story. She wasn't created initially to be made a hero, but we saw a cool opportunity while making a new support to have it be her, and it worked out great. That said, not every character/personality in the story will, or even should, be a hero. But we'll see. How many unused concepts of heroes have you guys made? This is actually really hard to answer. Most of the time, heroes go through a ton of iteration, and single abilities or weapons get cut. Oftentimes, we'll end up using an older cut idea on a new concept. For example, Orisa's first ultimate was an idea where she could teleport away, we'd probably kit this differently though, and then drop her anywhere else on the map via drop pod or something similar. This was back when she was extremely early and we didn't have a character yet, so I was sort of imagining a character like Dutch from Predator, hence the minigun. It ended up not really working for the gameplay, and really didn't make sense once we started developing Orisa's character. Much later, we were working on Doomfist and thought we could revisit this old idea, and that's how we ended up with his ult. Why is Tracer unable to recall out of Grav when Reaper and Moira can fade out, while those abilities are on a shorter cooldown? This is understandably super confusing, I totally agree with you. It sort of came about this way from a chain of rules that really don't even matter anymore necessarily. But here's how it went. Junkrat Trap is made, it blocks movement abilities. Okay, cool, let's playtest it. Oh, it's weird on Reaper though. Is Wraith Form a movement ability? It technically makes you faster, but doesn't really feel like a movement skill. And being able to Wraith, even if you can't move, would feel a lot better, so we go with that. Later, Zarya's ult gets the no mobility rule added to it, we just follow Junkrat's trap rules, which means Reaper can now escape Grav. Maybe this is fine, let's roll with it, it's consistent. Moira is made, Fade feels very similar to Wraith Form, however Fade is clearly much more of a mobility skill than Wraith Form, so it kinda breaks down the Junkrat Trap / Zarya ult case, which is where we are now. This is something we're looking at right now actually, as part of the Moira experimental V2 changes that will be coming somewhat soon. What we're currently testing is allowing Wraith Form / Fade to be used while in those abilities, Sigma's ult too, but not let you get free of the effect. This means that you can hit these abilities to get the immunity effect, but you can't run away. We'll see how that feels when it hits the experimental card. There's been a lot of talk about reworking certain damage characters into tanks and supports, such as Mei into a tank, or as mentioned, Symmetra into a support. What have the team's thoughts discussions been around this idea? Yes, we've been talking a lot about this, especially as we're working on Overwatch 2. Mei as a tank comes up quite a bit. It's something we can maybe try. She would have to get nearly reworked though. For example, her secondary fire is far too much damage and long range to go on a tank. But it's a possibility. Other ones that come up pretty consistently in conversations are Roadhog as a DPS, Sim as a support, Brig as a tank. It is well known at this point that tanks are the least popular role to play. Do you have any thoughts to share on this, i.e. balance philosophy, upcoming ideas on what you'd want to try? We've actually been talking about tanks as a role a lot recently. In the past, we've had trouble trying to figure out how to make tank heroes like Roadhog compete with big protective tanks like Reinhardt. Lately, we've been thinking, what if we just go the other direction? What if Reinhardt is more like Roadhog? What would that feel like for the entire game? Basically, what if all main tanks became off tanks? This would mean tanks would be less about pure protection and more about brawly offense. Barriers would be less prevalent, damage overall would be higher, tanks doing more damage and reducing less damage, which is kind of scary potentially. We've already been experimenting on this front, and so far it's been pretty fun, though the game does feel significantly different. Players have to play the map angles a lot more aggressively, as you can't just rely on your tank barrier for cover. I'm not sure where these experiments will go, but they're pretty interesting so far. Will there be a balance between the amount of heroes in each role, so think 33.3% in tank damage and support, or will damage always have the largest pool of heroes? This comes up a lot, so I'd like to touch on this. I would like to get the roster to 33% each. That's certainly a goal. That said, I'm worried about going a very long time without any damage hero representation. If you look at the release history, we've been trying to push it towards an even roster without just ignoring damage heroes entirely. Do you regret any of the reworks you have done with any of the heroes at all? Not really, though as I've mentioned a couple times here already, maybe we could have pushed harder to iterate on Symmetra as a healer instead of a damage dealer. Maybe we can still revisit her as a healer. So these have been all the interesting responses which stuck out to me from this most recent Overwatch Q&A. I'll of course have a link to the full Q&A and all the questions and answers linked in the description, but I just wanted to highlight these because some of them, particularly the one about Orisa being able to teleport as her ultimate, and also the discussion about Sombra having been a support, I found those very interesting, so I wanted to cover those and then talk about some of the other ones that seem a bit more interesting, particularly when it comes to potential reworks for heroes or new details for Overwatch 2, as of course those sorts of details are always very juicy to learn more about. Definitely let me know your thoughts on any of the developer responses I highlighted here in this video by dropping a comment down below. And as always, be sure to subscribe, hit up that bell icon, follow me on Twitter at MasterENGamer, and come join my Discord server to hang out and never miss any future Overwatch content. Special thanks to all my YouTube channel members who make these videos possible, and if you'd like to join them to earn some cool rewards, then just hit that join button down below. But otherwise, this is MasterENGamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.